Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on Mom Squad, a show where we talk all things parenting. And today, would you know what to do when emergency strikes? Do you panic? Do you keep your cool? We are taking a look at 3 different scenarios with 3 different emergency actions that you might need in everyday life. Joining me today, my fellow mom and co-host, Jenny Jordan, our executive producer as well. And we came up with this idea based on a couple of different stories, but one of them about like when your kids' teeth get knocked out.
Yes.
Which was like, I don't know, what do you do? And that is like a big fear of mine in general. I mean, how many dreams do we have where our teeth fall out?
Right,
And it's sort of like, oh my gosh, what would I do with that? And I had always heard put it in milk, and is that right? Like, so it's all those scenarios that we're talking about today. But yeah, now was it, you had a friend that had teeth knocked out, or no, I'm thinking of Lindsay Buckingham.
Our friend Lindsay, that's how it all started, you know, because us moms were sitting together, we're talking, oh my gosh, did you hear about this? And did you hear about that?
Yeah.
And anytime we hear little tips or tidbits, like, did you know that if they swallow a button, you can eat honey?
Yeah.
You'll hear more about that in a minute. But, you know, because it's these fears that we all have as parents, like, what would I do? Would I know what to do, you know? And so we always are sharing those. And so Lindsay had a pretty good one, a pretty good story.
And so that kind of spurred this on. And then we're also going to cover, so Jenny mentioned we're going to do that button battery, which I have a story about that. All those button batteries that are in all sorts of toys, that the tiny circular ones, and then also going over CPR, which I think, especially coming into the summer months when, you know, we're outside, there's a lot of pools around, there's picnics, and kids are going to be playing outside. You know, it's just like, I think it's always good to know and get reminders about CPR. So we're going to take a look at those 3 different scenarios, and then Jenny and I will share stories, and we have a couple other different just good things to know or talk about within your family to make sure that you are staying on track when it comes to emergencies and having the whole family prepared. So let's take a look at the 3 different emergencies. Like we mentioned, if your kids' teeth get knocked out, but I guess if yours get knocked out too, this
it would work for both.
Or for anybody.
Sure. Okay.
What to do in that moment if your child swallows a button battery, or how to recognize those signs too, and what you can do to help save their life on the way to the emergency room. And we have that refresher on CPR. Take a look.
Do you know what to do if your kid requires medical attention? It's important to be prepared in case you can't get help right away.
We're pretty much trained to leave the building within 2 minutes of receiving an alert, and then it generally takes about 5 minutes for us to arrive.
It will feel like forever for first responders to show up if your kid is in a dire situation. So let's make sure you can keep your kids safe until you can get to a medical provider. A lost tooth seems harmless enough, but what if it's an adult tooth? Dentist Dr. Susan Maples says you need to shove the tooth back into the gums.
You'd like to get it right back up in there and hold it. You know, so obviously you don't want one person, you know, sitting with the child as they're on the way to the dentist. And
it's gruesome, but it'll mean that your child will keep their teeth.
It means a lifetime of dentistry in the front of your mouth, unfortunately, but we're really good at restorative solutions these days.
A button battery can be found in a lot of kids' toys and household objects, but they're incredibly dangerous if your kid swallows one. You want to get them to a hospital right away, but while you're on the way, feed them honey. Yes, honey can prevent severe damage to your kid's body. The Cleveland Clinic says 2 teaspoons of honey every 10 minutes while you are on your way to receive care. But how will you know if they have swallowed a battery? Look for a refusal to eat or drink, excessive drooling, noisy breathing, or even bloody stool, saliva, or vomiting. Be sure you keep track of how many button batteries are in your house and make sure they're kept out of reach. And finally, cardiac arrest can happen to anyone of any age, but CPR for children differs from CPR for adults. So here's what to do if your kid goes into cardiac arrest.
If they call 911, they want to check to see if the child is able to breathe at all. If the child's coughing, if the child's able to talk, they want to encourage the child to keep doing that.
If your child is unresponsive with no breathing or pulse, it's time to start CPR.
When we're going to go ahead and start compressions, we're going to put our hands right in the center of the chest, and we're going to push down and we want to go at a rate of between 100 to 120 times per minute.
If your child hasn't yet reached puberty, do 15 compressions and 2 breaths, pinching the nose and breathing into the mouth. And if your infant becomes unresponsive.
And when we feel for a pulse for an infant, it's going to be different. We're not going to feel up here in the carotid. We're actually going to feel on their arm, and we're going to feel on the brachial. That's where it's going to be the easiest for us to feel a pulse.
And CPR on an infant is different too.
There's 2 different types of compressions you can use it do in an infant, and it's either 2 fingers, just like this, or you can actually use your 2 thumbs.
You will continue to use your rescue breaths, too, at a rate of 30 compressions and 2 breaths. Mentor Fire Department also says you can use an AED if your child is still unresponsive, not breathing, and has no pulse. These are typically available in public spaces, and most will have instructions printed on the pads.
Some AEDs have different patches for pediatrics as well. They'll still connect the same way, and it'll still have pictures on where the patches need to go.
And the best thing to do in any situation is keep your child calm.
Every child's going to be different, and the parents or the caregiver is going to know them best and know what's going to be able to calm them down.
And I know as parents, maybe you took those birthing classes where they had you do infant CPR, but do you remember it? And in that moment, will you remember how many chest compressions and how many breaths? I think I always freak out that I'm like, oh my gosh, will I remember how to do it? And so it's a good thing to constantly just kind of take a look over and over again about, you know, how many compressions, the timing of it, what to do when, you know, like, are they breathing? Are they not breathing? Can you get a pulse? Can you not get a pulse? And actually right after I took, so here I am super pregnant with my first, and right after I took the infant CPR class, I mean like days after, I'm sitting by the pool with a whole bunch of family, and my little nephew was sitting there eating grapes, and everybody's talking, and he made all of the motions of, like, I had just taken the course, and I'm like, I jump up and I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, but luckily, like, even just the force of like grabbing him, he was able to just cough it up. But that's one of those scenarios. You sit there and you think, oh, will I ever really use this? And then days later, there I was trying to remember, okay, what did I just remember and what did I just learn?
Well, grapes are scary.
Yes.
Grapes are, like, who knew grapes could be scary? But they are, because you think, okay, fruit, they're tiny, they're perfect, you know, but then they get caught there. And so now they sell grape cutters that you can, like, use. Which
Good, because I'm always cutting grapes.
I know.
I still do. I'm one of those crazy parents.
I know, but because I get nervous, and then you're like, you think you're gonna watch them the whole time, but you don't know when they go grab a grape off the counter and things like that. So it's funny because it's like you don't realize all these things, and then you're having kids and everything seems scary.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're safety proofing your whole house. Yeah. And you're thinking, like, okay, are they going to stick their hand in the socket? And all these things that you do every day that they're like, oh my gosh, now you're scared about grapes, sockets, things like that.
Right. And that's choking. I mean, so that's where we use CPR, but also with swim season coming up. I mean, you might have just gotten back from spring break. Maybe you're on spring break. And safety near the water is always so important. We cannot preach it enough. And actually, we were just talking, you were saying color of bathing suits.
I read this article. I thought it was fascinating. They were saying, especially like if you're in the lake or the ocean, please, you know, kind of where the water is, if you have a bright color bathing suits are better, because when the kids get pulled down under, it's hard to see. If they're in a dark bathing suit, it's a lot harder for lifeguards or people to see them get pulled under. Whereas if they're bright, you can look down and see where you're at right away. So that's, I mean, I think that a lot of the kids' bathing suits are kind of, you know, fun colors anyways, but it's important for adults too to think about. Really, if you're not a good swimmer, you might want to consider that.
Well, and that's what I thought of when you said brighter color bathing suit getting pulled under. How many times have we heard about, you know, nationally, that somebody jumped in to save their kids and then they get pulled under? So maybe we need to think about that. I'm thinking, like, my husband's swim trunks are like a dark navy blue. Maybe we need to invest in some brighter ones when we're near the ocean, just in case. And always investing in those life jackets. Or a while ago, we did stories about what's the safest water, you know, just there's the vests for kids. I mean, anything that is Coast Guard approved life jacket is what you want to look for.
And it's right on the tags.
Yes.
Usually it'll be on the cardboard box, you know,
Yes.
the cardboard that they're sticking on, and they're on the tags too. So important.
Yeah. Years ago, I mean, we even put them to the test. I had a kid in a pool trying out, I mean, he was safe. He was safe the whole time, but trying out each life vest and the water, not just the water wings, you know, those like when we were kids, there was just the blow up floaties on our arms, but the ones that go across the chest with the wings were the safest because then it also pulled them up to have their chest float up so that you're getting pulled on your back with your face up instead of just some of those vests they like sink down in.
Yeah, and you got to make sure they're fit right too.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Read those instructions and make sure that they're fit right. Just like helmets on the bikes, you know, you got to make sure they're wearing it right. I laugh because my son, you know, when you're putting the helmet on, one time. It like pinches little skin, which I know hurts. It feels so bad. So now when you're trying to put his helmet on, he's like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, are you gonna pinch me again? It was one time, and I'm getting me to it. I feel really bad about it already. But you know what I mean? But you gotta make sure that they're not, you know, they're not moving around because there's a reason we're wearing them, so we gotta wear it right too.
Right.
Yeah.
The button battery situation, it's terrifying. I feel like there's all those things, you know, I'd be interested to know also if that applied to like the magnets and things that kids eat, but button battery, it happens, you think like, I'm such a great parent and my kid's never gonna eat a button battery. Like,
Right, when am I gonna have him just laying around, you know?
Right, but I was out in the yard gardening. My middle daughter was 8 months old, so she's just sitting there on a blanket. Here I had a couple toys. One of them was like a doctor stethoscope, or like it was from a doctor kit. And everything, I thought, you know, all of the cases were screwed on tightly. I didn't think it, I mean, she's only 8 months old. What is she gonna be doing?
Right.
Somehow something got loose. And I'm gardening, I'm watching her. She's totally fine. She's happy, she's cooing. And I walk over there and the door, like the case where the batteries are, somehow came undone. Like, I don't know what she did to it that she used baby force to open up those tiny little screws that you can't get undone. I don't know what happened. I don't know how
we were trying to change the battery, we couldn't do it. We couldn't get in there, but somehow.
I know. It's like you never have a screwdriver small enough. But the button battery was missing. And so I just flipped out because I just assumed she ate it. And so I like rush her to the hospital. I'll never forget her tiny little 8-month-old body underneath the x-ray. And I'm just like bawling my eyes out. And I didn't know what to do. Now, of course, she's under the age of 1 at that point. You can't feed babies honey.
Oh, that's true, right, yeah.
So I don't know if that would have done it, but it turns out the button battery flew into the grass. Like they did the x-rays and everything, but it just, every time I hear the button battery situation, I always think, like, I thought that would never be a scenario I'd ever have to deal with. I'm so careful, and then here I was in that situation, freaking out about the button battery.
Right, right. And when you say that though, I am a better safe than sorry mom.
Yeah.
Where it's like, make sure that it's not there because you would hate to be the person that thinks, okay, oh, it's probably fine. It's probably just in the ground. You know what I mean?
Right.
I always go that extra step, and I'm sorry to all the doctors and appointments I've made where they've, oh, that's just a cold, sorry. You know?
Right. But and then those signs and symptoms to look out for, that's of course if you go days, like you never know. I mean, what if they're playing?
Well, and if they're acting weird and you're not sure why, and then it's like, oh, wait.
Yeah, that's always good to know. And as we're talking emergencies, I think it's really important to talk about emergency plans too, because I know a debate that comes up in my circle of friends all the time. I'm sure you've talked about it too. Like, we all have cell phones that have passwords. How are you teaching your kids to call 911? I have had friends that put the landline back in. Like it's 1985 again. We have a landline.
Yes.
We don't yet. And I don't think I've really shown my kids what to do. Like they've accidentally hit emergency call on my phone.
Right.
Have you gone over that with kids?
Yes, so I did. It was after in Ohio, they do Safety Town. I think other towns,
Yeah.
I'm sure other states do it too, where they learn how to call 911 and they learn their address and their parents' phone number. And I kind of had that moment of like, well, how is she gonna, what are we gonna do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, so all you do is you take your phone, you show them. If you just swipe up, it will give you an emergency call. And I showed her where to press it.
Okay.
And we've gone over it a couple of times too, just in situations where I've been like, you know how to do that, right? Now, another thing though, my husband and I have talked about with her, and is maybe something other people could use, is we have a Ring doorbell. So we're always like, if you need to get a hold of us, you can go out and hit the Ring doorbell, and we can answer and talk to them. I mean, my daughter's 6, she's never home alone. You know what I mean? But we always thought, okay, if you get locked out, like I'm always thinking, okay, if she gets off the bus and for some reason I fell asleep in the house or something and she can't get in, how would I know that?
Right.
She doesn't have a cell phone. Go to the neighbor's house is obviously an option.
Yeah.
But I thought, okay, well, if you ring the doorbell, then it rings to both me and my husband's phone.
Yeah.
And so that is one way that we sort of communicate with them as well.
Well, that's a good idea. Even like, what if I'm laughing because on Friday, my husband was working from home. I had to leave to come into work, and our 4-year-old was watching TV, but he was doing phone calls, and I wrote out on just the back of an envelope, help. I said, here, if you need any help with anything, just hold that up to Daddy. Don't run in.
Yeah.
Don't run in and bother his phone call. Just hold up the sign outside the office because he has a window, like it's glass going into his office. He calls me later. He goes, I thought you fell down and had a heart attack or something, like that you could barely write out help. I'm like, oh yeah, that probably wasn't a great, I probably should have warned you that I gave her a help sign in case she needed it. But I mean, the Ring doorbell, what if, how did they get in touch at that age? If something happens to you, like what if I fall down the stairs and my husband's at work, or what if I do pass out for some reason? How did they get in touch at that age if they don't know how to use the phone, the Ring doorbell, or whatever doorbell camera you might have?
And we've said that too, because we have their grandparents watch them sometimes.
Yes.
And I'm always worried. They're elderly. If they would fall or something, they wouldn't be able to get the help that they need. And I'm sure they'd walk them through it, or hopefully that would be the situation. But that's just another little way to at least get in contact with us.
Yeah. Now, here's where I'm probably failing a little bit, but you mentioned Safety Town, and I know they teach them at Safety Town, what's your emergency fire plan? If there's a fire in the house. And I remember at least my 2 older ones coming home and saying, Mom, what are we gonna do if there's a fire? And do we have a ladder? And do we have all that? And I'm like, oh, we'll get to it. And we've never practiced the fire drill at home, but emergency responders encourage you to practice a fire drill at home in case you're in that situation. Have you practiced?
We have not either. No,
I know.
And I think there was a story we did one time where people were saved from having these ladders, and I was like, they were in my Amazon cart at one point, these ladders that fold out and they could get out really quickly. And I don't do that too. But now we did get the smoke detectors that record your voice. Have you heard of these?
Yes.
I mean, they've been out for a while. It's not brand new, but I thought it was really neat that they hear you instead of just the loud beep. It's like, hey, it's Mom. There's a fire. We practiced this, or you need to get out. And I always just don't come looking for us. Get out.
Yes.
Get out. We'll find you, get out, run to the neighbor's house.
Yeah.
So we've talked about it a lot, but to actually execute it, no, we should practice.
It's a good reminder, just in general, as you're thinking about emergencies, what is that plan? Where do you put that ladder in your house to make sure that they can safely get out a window and crawl down? We did some remodeling, and now I remember thinking, oh, now this window would be a great one if somebody needs to get out of the second story, but we've never discussed it as a family. So next rainy day, why not sit down and come up with an emergency plan? I also had something interesting, speaking of just kind of thinking about your house and in terms of safety. One time, I think I had a contractor over, and they were having trouble finding my house. And the guy was very blunt. And I let him in, hi, I'm so-and-so, nice to meet you. And he goes, you know what? I can't see your house number from the street. He goes, if you are ever in an emergency, they're not gonna be able to find you. I can't find your house number easily. And it made me think, oh my gosh, I have it kind of like on my front door, but if it's dark.
Yes.
And so again, another emergency tip that I keep seeing pop up is make sure that your house number is lit well, and make sure that it's visible from, we're also a corner lot, so I made sure to put it on
both sides,
and then I got a sticker for the mailbox, because he did point out a flaw in the house that, what if I called 911 and they're searching for my house number to make sure that it's the right house.
Right, that is a good one. I haven't thought about that.
Yeah.
I'm like, can you tell? Maybe from the mailbox? Oh,
yeah.
Probably not, yeah.
I mean, it's something to definitely think about. And then another, I know we keep bringing back to Safety Town with kids, but if you don't have that, or maybe you missed it because of the pandemic or something, fire stations will typically let you come in with a kid. You can call and ask, when can we get a tour of the fire station? I just did it with our Girl Scouts, just so that the kids, get to see the firefighters up close. They get to see what kind of equipment they have. But then there is something else very interesting. This is more for the adults. I mean, you can do this for the kids. But again, this was an emergency life-saving tip that I saw pop up as we were talking about this story. To have them check your blood pressure. Like, would you know if you have high, low, middle blood pressure?
No, even when I'm at the doctor's, they say whatever it is, 100 over
right,
whatever.
They give you the numbers.
And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Well, one time I was at a fire station, firefighter took my blood pressure, and he goes, do you know that you have ridiculously low blood pressure? And I had heard my dad say that he had really low blood pressure. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, my dad has it. He goes, no, if you're ever in an accident, you have to tell them, because if they take your blood pressure and it's this low, they're gonna start administering drugs that you don't need. And I was like, oh, really? Like, I didn't know that about myself, because like you said, they always just throw out numbers.
Yeah.
And then actually during one of my, during labor with, I think maybe my first, the nurses were like, oh, you know what, your blood pressure is really low. We're gonna have to do, and I said, I actually have really low blood pressure normally. I remember it coming up, I was probably a little out of it, but I remember having to tell them, oh, no, that's just my regular blood pressure, because they were starting to get concerned.
Maybe we could do like a mom squad tour at the firefighting house.
Right. What do moms need to know when you're
What do moms need to know?
But it's, it's a good medical question that, I don't know, I mean, I guess maybe it's worth knowing if your kids also have that, but I think, just as parents, it's good to know. It's one of those numbers. We always talk about know your numbers.
Yes.
That's probably a good one to know offhand, so that you can at least relate, or if it's really high, I mean, you probably want to tell them, like, I have really high blood pressure. I'm sure you know at that point, because the doctor would probably tell you, you have to get your blood pressure down, but I don't know. It was just something that I don't think in life, had I not sat there and got my blood pressure taken by a firefighter, I would have never thought twice.
No.
So, yeah.
No.
So there you go.
Low blood pressure Kyle over here.
I know, right?
Keep it low key.
You're right. Right. I didn't know that was a problem until then. All right. Well, we have a Facebook page now.
Yes.
I know. I keep mentioning this, but this is where we want to hear from you. Again, we're talking about all these life-saving tips. There's probably a bazillion that we missed. So if there's something that you've ever heard that you think, I wish every family tried out this emergency plan, or I wish I had known this before such and such emergency. Oh, you even talked about having that first aid kit in the car.
Yes, that was one of the best gifts I got at my baby shower, was like a first aid kit for the car and the diaper bag and for home. And then it was things that, you just don't think you're gonna need, and then until you do, whenever they fall off the bike and you need the peroxide to clean it out, and just things like that. It was such a good gift to get. And I think that on our Facebook page too, I want to hear more, what's the safety lessons that our kids go to Safety Town, but what about teenagers, when they're driving? What do you want them, what life-saving things can you teach them about skating on the ice? And and I'm sure there's underage drinking, and there's a lot of safety things with that, so we can all sound off on that too.
And that's where we also want to hear your ideas. Coming up in the next couple of weeks, we're talking a lot about teenagers, because when I asked on Facebook, the biggest, and Jenny and I are running this Facebook page, I think the number one thing that I heard immediately from a couple people on there, grandparents and parents, were, oh, my teen, disrespectful. How do I help fix that? So next week we're gonna take a look at, we're interviewing a comedian who's also a teacher, and she gives us a little insight into what your kids might be saying to teachers. And then the week following, we talked to one of my favorite psychologists about how to get your kids to cut the attitude. I guess that's the best way I can say it. And how
lose the tude.
Lose the tude, and then also how you can talk to them and guide them throughout those pivotal years.
Oh, hormones, yuck.
I know.
Yeah.
All right, well, Jenny, thank you.
Thank you.
Always great to talk to you, and always great to see you on Mom Squad. We'll see you right back here next time.